After 10 grueling years of relentless and bloody conflict, the Trojan War, a legendary struggle sparked by Prince Paris of Troy's abduction of Helen, wife to the Spartan king Menelaus, was finally drawing to a close. Celebrated as a narrative of courage, deceit, and human suffering, the siege and eventual fall of Troy left behind a legacy of ruin, heartbreaking loss, and profound sorrow, particularly for the city's women, who would bear witness and become the final victims of this monumental ancient tragedy. In the early dawn, a thick haze blanketed the wreckage of Troy as Poseidon rose slowly from the waters of the Aegean Sea. His expression reflected both sadness and disapproval. Stepping resolutely onto the shore, he surveyed the city's silent ruins, remains he himself had once helped fortify.
Here in this city I strengthened with my own hands. Now only ashes and death remain.
His gaze swept the fallen walls, scorched temples and desecrated altars, holy places now defiled by blood. Athena appeared at his side, bathed in a gentle yet imposing radiance.
I share your sorrow. I was the one who inspired the Greeks to build the horse that brought Troy down, yet I cannot forgive the insult committed by those who ought to have honored me.
Poseidon arched a curious eyebrow at her.
So why are you here, at the city you destroyed? Have you come to admire your achievement?
No, uncle. I need your help in seeking vengeance. The Greeks desecrated my temple. Ajax assaulted Cassandra in front of my offer. No one has punished that atrocity. I will not let it go unavenged.
Poseidon pondered briefly before a sinister hint of a smile crossed his face.
I agree to aid you in this vengeance. The seas by which the Greeks journey home will be their undoing. I'll unleash monstrous storms and towering waves upon their ships. Zeus will send his lightning, and together we'll ensure that the Greeks' victory tastes bitter like defeat.
Casting one final look on desolate Troy, a once magnificent and prosperous city, now reduced to smoldering wreckage, a silent witness to both human rage and divine whims, the two gods departed, each resolved to deliver retribution upon those who had so brazenly offended them. With the sun beginning to rise in a crimson sky, Poseidon returned to the sea, vanishing beneath restless waves. Athena ascended to Olympus, preparing to ask Zeus for her mightiest weapon. The fall of Troy was complete, but for the Greeks, the voyage home would prove even more harrowing. At daybreak, a solitary figure knelt amid the ruins before the collapsed city walls. It was Hecuba, once Troy's powerful queen, now brought to the depths of suffering. Her royal robes were torn and coated in dust, and her eyes mirrored the anguish of the entire world.
Oh, my children! Oh, Priam, my king and husband!
Her voice rang out in sheer despair as she stretched her arms skyward.
What good were our pride and these walls, now toppled and burned by invaders?
Tears streamed down her weathered face, recalling all she had lost. Around her, other Trojan women wept as well, joining in the same searing lament. Their husbands, sons, and brothers had perished in merciless battles, and now the only future awaiting them was bitter enslavement. Hecuba embraced those nearest her, seeking solace in their shared sorrow.
Our Troy is no more. We are no longer queens, princesses, or free mothers. We are prisoners, subject to the cruel fate of conquerors. Who will restore our joy? Who will rebuild our lives?
Cried Hecuba, her heart shattered. Uncertainty and darkness lay ahead, and all they could do was bear their pain and bravely face the destiny imposed upon them. As the Trojan women continued their lamentation, resolute steps approached. Talthybius, the Greek herald, presented himself with a stern and impassive expression. "Hecuba, I have come to declare the fate set aside for you and the other Trojan women. Cassandra has been chosen as a concubine for King Agamemnon. Andromache, wife of the fallen hero Hector, will be taken by Neoptolemus, Achilles' son. As for you, Hecuba, you will serve as a slave to Odysseus, the strategist you despise most." Hecuba turned pale, feeling his words weigh heavily on her already battered soul.
"And what of Polyxena, my other daughter?"
she asked in a trembling voice, nearly unable to face the response. Talthybius lowered his gaze briefly, speaking in a hushed tone edged with sorrow. "Polyxena is no longer among the living. She was sacrificed upon Achilles' tomb in a rite demanded by the Greek warriors." Hecuba collapsed once more into wrenching sobs, all hope extinguished. Their cruel fate was now unmistakable, leaving no room for any belief that mercy could still be found. Cassandra emerged from the crowd, wholly lost in delirium. Her priestly garments were torn and grimy from the dust and blood of recent battles. Moving erratically, as though dancing a twisted ritual, she seesawed between hollow exultation, like a wedding celebration, and the consuming grief of a funeral.
"Prepare the feast! Play the wedding music! The king of the Greeks awaits me, bride of ruin!"
Her steps were rapid, unpredictable, as though she were enacting some unfamiliar ceremony. While she spun, she alternated between pained smiles and silent tears streaking down her face. Mid-delirium, Cassandra began issuing frightening prophecies.
"Agamemnon, king of kings, believes he has triumphed, but his homecoming is cursed. He will be greeted not by loving embraces, but by cold, treacherous knives in his very household. His blood will stain the walls of Mycenae."
She paused momentarily, her eyes suddenly sharp and lucid, fixing themselves on the women around her. Her voice dropped to a sinister pitch.
"And Odysseus, the sly, cunning strategist, will find no peace on his way back. Monsters and tumultuous seas await him, plunging him into boundless torment. For many years he will wander lost and desperate, until death itself seems a sweeter gift than life."
The Trojan women stood transfixed, frightened, yet riveted by the tragic display before them. Some trembled at Cassandra's nightmarish visions. Others choked back sobs, unable to bear yet another onslaught of sorrow. At last, Cassandra stopped, gasping for air. A fleeting calm settled over her face as she spoke, with uncharacteristic clarity, almost prophetic.
"Women of Troy, our husbands, brothers, and sons fought valiantly, giving their lives for our land's honor and freedom. Let us not forget their sacrifice. Their deaths were not in vain, and their glory will endure for as long as our tears fade into oblivion. Let us honor their bravery, for while our suffering may pass, their greatness shall remain forever."
She then slumped slowly to the ground, overwhelmed by extreme fatigue, and the captive silence returned. The terrible weight of her prophecies, and the memory of the Trojans' valor, seemed all the more unbearable in the face of Cassandra's painful lucidity. Andromache, Hector's wife, now approached slowly, holding the small Astyanax in her arms. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her features etched by profound sorrow.
"Hecuba, mother of my beloved Hector, another calamity has befallen us. The Greeks, fearing that Astyanax, son of valiant Hector, will one day grow up and threaten Greece, have decided to throw this innocent child from the walls of our devastated city."
Hecuba, horrified, stretched out shaking hands toward her grandson.
"No, they can't do this. Show mercy,"
she cried, while Andromache held Astyanax tightly, sobbing in despair. The boy, too young to grasp the terror around him, simply regarded his mother and grandmother with wide, curious eyes. Heartbroken, Andromache sank to her knees beside Hecuba. Together they embraced the child one final time.
"Farewell, Astyanax, my son, heir to Troy's greatest hero. The gods grant you the love and honor you deserve, though you will never grow to be king. Goodbye, my child, peace of my heart."
Hecuba pressed a tender kiss to her grandson's forehead.
Farewell, my little warrior. Take our love with you, and know we will never forget you.
Tears and anguished cries filled the air as the Trojan women watched, helpless, while Astyanax was carried away by Greek soldiers. The agony of that parting seared their souls forever, marking it as the most harrowing chapter in the tragedy of Troy. While the women were still weeping for Astyanax, the sound of firm footsteps heralded the arrival of Menelaus, king of Sparta. His expression was grim and unwavering, his gaze fixed on Helen, the woman whose beauty had triggered the most destructive war in Trojan history. He halted before the gathered women, his cold stare resting on Helen.
"At last, the moment of reckoning. You, Helen, brought on this ruin and sorrow. Now you will pay for your infidelity and for the war you unleashed on our peoples."
Helen, chin lifted, turned her blazing eyes on Menelaus, defiant.
"My lord, don't accuse me unjustly. I did not choose this fate. It was the gods who hurled me into this catastrophe. Aphrodite, in her cruel whim, bound me to Paris, and I, being mortal, could not resist divine schemes."
Hecuba, hearing Helen's words, stood abruptly, an unforeseen strength drawn from her pent-up fury. Her voice resonated with indignation and anguish, cutting through Helen's protestations.
Liar! Do not dare blame the gods for your own choices. You could have resisted, but you chose to forsake your honor, your home, and your husband, causing the death of countless innocents. You deserve no pity, no forgiveness.
The other women rumbled with murmurs of rage and resentment, supporting Hecuba's fierce condemnation. Helen, feeling cornered, tried once more to defend herself, but her voice wavered under the force of the Trojan women's fury. Menelaus, observing closely, raised his hand to silence them.
"Enough! Helen will be taken back to Greece, where she'll be judged and punished accordingly. It's not for us here and now to decide her fate."
Helen lowered her eyes, sensing that her destiny was sealed. Menelaus, however, declined to impose sentence immediately.
"Death here would be too merciful. I'd rather she face justice in full view of all Greece, so that her example serves as both warning and lesson."
As Helen was led away by the soldiers, the Trojan women stood wordless, torn between a flicker of relief and the bitterness of their anguish. The ultimate fate of the woman who had brought about so much tragedy and devastation remained unknown, yet at least a promise of justice hovered in the oppressive air of their suffering. After Helen's departure, a heavy silence descended upon the Trojan women, broken only by the sad, wordless return of Talthybius. His slow, weighted steps revealed that he carried tidings of yet more grief. In his arms, wrapped in rough cloth stained with blood, lay the small, motionless body of Astyanax. Hecuba looked up as Talthybius approached, and her heart froze at the sight of her lifeless grandson.
Oh, Astyanax, my sweet child.
She gently took her grandson into her arms, cradling him in one last, desperate embrace as tears streamed ceaselessly down her grief-stricken face.
My dear grandson, heir of brave Hector, you are our final hope, the promise of a future now lost forever. How could the gods permit such cruelty against one so innocent?
The other women drew close around Hecuba in silence, sharing her profound and unrelenting sorrow. Andromache, overwhelmed by grief and helplessness, knelt by her mother-in-law, tenderly stroking her son's hair. Her voice wavered in a trembling whisper.
"My little Astyanax, beloved child, why were the gods so cruel to us?"
Summoning what strength remained, Hecuba chose to perform one last symbolic act, worthy of remembrance. Carefully, she placed Astyanax's small body on his father Hector's shield, the great defender of Troy.
May this serve as your final bed, my darling, so that you may rest for eternity under the protection of this shield your father so bravely carried to defend our beloved Troy.
In hushed tears, the women looked on as Astyanax was laid to rest upon that glorious shield, the ultimate emblem of Trojan valor and resilience. While the sun set on the horizon, bathing the city's ruins in a reddish glow, the Greeks began their final terrible deed. Troy was to be consumed by fire. Fierce flames rapidly rose, devouring the few remaining houses, temples, and walls, turning what had once been a grand and imposing city into ashes. Led by a devastated Hecuba, the Trojan women watched in powerlessness as the inferno roared. The glow of the fire was reflected in their tearful eyes, and each snap of the flames echoed the deep anguish they felt in their hearts.
Look carefully, women of Troy, for this is our last glimpse of the city we so dearly loved. Our home is now nothing but flames and ruin, and we, its daughters, are prisoners, fated to live far from the land where we were born.
With impatient gestures, Greek soldiers herded the women toward the ships bound for Greece, where a life of enslavement and humiliation awaited them. Hecuba walked slowly, leaning on those closest to her, casting one last look behind at her cherished city vanishing in the fire.
Farewell, Troy. I take with me only memories and pain, but your name will never be forgotten. May future generations learn of our story and heed the lessons of our tragedy.
They proceeded in silence. Behind them, the flames devoured the last vestiges of Trojan glory, finally ending the war and marking the onset of a long, bitter exile.